My husband's death left a void, but his secrets left a chasm that threatened to swallow me whole. For 30 years, I refused to set foot on the Wyoming ranch, where our greatest joy turned to unbearable sorrow. I came back only to sell the ghosts of our past, to sign the papers and walk away forever. But when my trembling hand pushed the gate I thought had been rusted shut for decades, it swung open without a sound, revealing a path that was not abandoned. It was waiting. What he hid from me here wasn't just a secret, it was another life. Please subscribe and support our channel. Just get the photos for the real estate agent, Mom. Sign the documents next week, and it will all be over, Mark had told me over the phone. His voice laced with that gentle condescension he'd adopted ever since Arthur died 6 months ago. It was the same tone all 3 of my children used, as if, at 68 years old, I had become a porcelain doll, one sharp shock away from shattering into 1,000 pieces. They didn't understand that the real break had happened 30 years ago, right here on this unforgiving Wyoming soil. The place where Leo, my beautiful, adventurous firstborn, had taken his last breath. I couldn't even finish the thought, the name catching in my throat like a shard of glass, even after all this time. The memory was a locked room inside me, and returning to this ranch felt like being forced to turn the key. My children couldn't possibly grasp the gravity of this place. They were too young when we fled to Salt Lake City, leaving everything behind but the clothes on our backs and a silence that consumed our family for years. Julia, my daughter, had been especially insistent on the sale. An energy company is offering $25 million. Mom, $25 million? Think of what that could do for all of us. For the grandkids, she'd argued, her husband, a slick corporate lawyer, nodding in agreement beside her. Dad would have wanted us to be secure, but would he have? In the 3 decades of our second life, the life we built after the ranch, Arthur mentioned this place so rarely it was as if he'd performed a surgical extraction of it from his memory, mirroring my own desperate attempts to forget. Yet, there were the trips. 3, sometimes 4 times a year, he'd be gone for a long weekend. Architectural conferences, fishing trips with old college buddies, continuing education seminars. The excuses were always different, but the result was always the same. He'd return with a strange, settled quietness about him, a stillness that I mistook for peace. I pushed against the heavy wooden gate, expecting the groan of weathered timber and the resistance of 3 decades of neglect. Instead, it swung inward with an oiled, silent ease that sent a jolt of alarm through me. The thick chain and padlock that I remembered were gone. My heart began to beat a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The long gravel road that led to the farmhouse wasn't choked with weeds and sagebrush as it should have been. It was clear, graded, with fresh tire tracks pressed into the dirt. "Hello?" I called out, my voice a frail thing against the immense, silent landscape and the endless blue sky. "Is anyone here?" Silence was my only answer. But as I began the half-mile walk toward the hill that hid the house from view, the wrongness of it all grew with every step. The barbed wire fences that lined the road weren't sagging and broken. They were taut and repaired, with new wooden posts sunk firmly into the earth. On a distant ridge, a modern wind turbine turned its blades in a slow, hypnotic circle, a structure that certainly hadn't existed in our time. In the valley below, I could see the glint of rooftops, plural. There were new buildings, not just the single weathered silhouette of our old farmhouse. A wave of dizziness washed over me, a primal urge to turn back, to get in my car and call Mark or Daniel and tell them something was terribly wrong. But a deeper, more stubborn curiosity pulled me forward, propelled by the echo of Arthur's favorite phrase, the words he always used when my own fear threatened to paralyze me. "The only way out is through, Nora girl." As I finally reached the crest of the last rolling hill, the breath left my body in a single, sharp gasp. The scene below was not the derelict ghost of my nightmares. It was a vibrant, living community. Our old two-story farmhouse stood proud in center, but it was freshly painted a soft sage green, with a wide, welcoming porch. Arranged in a neat semicircle around it were at least a dozen small modern cabins. A massive barn, its roof a gleaming sheet of new metal, stood off to one side, and next to it, a vast greenhouse shimmered under the afternoon sunday. And there were people, everywhere. A small group of men were gathered around a tractor, tools in hand. Laughter drifted from a fenced-in playground where children were climbing on a colorful play structure. A woman was hanging laundry on a line, the bright sheets snapping in the prairie wind. And in a large corral I'd never seen before, at least 20 horses grazed peacefully. I must have made a sound, a choked cry of disbelief, because one of the women looked up from the garden she was tending. She was middle-aged, her dark hair streaked with gray and pulled back in a simple ponytail. She shielded her eyes with her hand, and when her gaze landed on me, she froze for a heartbeat. Then, she quickly said something to a young man beside her, who immediately broke into a run, heading for the main house. I was frozen to the spot, unable to process the impossible scene as she walked toward me, her stride purposeful. Who was this woman? What was this place? Had Arthur sold the ranch years ago without ever telling me? "Mrs. Vance?" she called out as she drew closer, her voice calm and steady. She knew my name. "Eleanor Vance?" "Yes," I managed to whisper, my own voice sounding alien and thin. "Who are you? What is all of this?" She stopped a few feet away, her expression a mixture of kindness and caution as she studied my face. "My name is Sarah Clark. I'm the director here," she said. "We've been waiting for you." The word hung in the air between us. Waiting. "I don't understand," I stammered, shaking my head as if to clear it. "This ranch has been abandoned for 30 years. A sad, knowing smile touched her lips. "No, Mrs. Vance. This ranch has never been abandoned. Not for a single day since you left." The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet, and I reached out to grip a nearby fence post, the rough wood digging into my palm. "That's impossible. We moved to Salt Lake City right after Leo, after the accident. Your husband came back," she said, her voice gentle but firm, delivering a truth my mind refused to accept. "He came back the very next month, and every month after that, for 30 years, right up until his heart finally gave out." The world spun, the blue sky and green valley blurring into a dizzying vortex. Arthur, my Arthur, here, every month, not just 3 or 4 times a year for his so-called conferences, but 12, maybe more. All those weekends, all those plausible excuses, all of them lies. "You're lying," I whispered, the accusation weak, because a cold, terrifying certainty was already taking root in my soul. I knew, somehow, that she was telling the truth. "For your sake, I wish I were," Sarah replied, her voice filled with a compassion that felt both genuine and devastating. "I know this is an overwhelming shock." She gestured toward the freshly painted farmhouse, the home where I had spent 10 of the happiest years of my life before they were consumed by a single horrific afternoon. "Would you like to come inside? There's someone who has been especially eager to meet you." Before I could answer, as if on cue, a man hurried out of the main house. He was about 35, with the unmistakable features of Down syndrome, and perched on his head, at a slightly jaunty angle, was Arthur's old, weathered fishing hat. His face, open and beaming, lit up with pure joy the moment he saw me. "Leo's mommy!" he called out, his voice ringing with excitement as he waved enthusiastically. "Leo's mommy is here!" She finally came. The name struck me with the force of a physical blow. Leo. No one had called my son that in 30 years. It was a name reserved for the quiet moments between a mother, a father, and their boy. To everyone else, in the few times he was ever mentioned, he was the formal, complete Benjamin. The name felt like an intimate treasure, unearthed and exposed to the harsh daylight. "Samuel, honey, remember what we talked about?" Sarah said gently, placing a calming hand on his arm as he reached us. "This is Mrs. Vance." The man, Samuel, immediately straightened up, his expression becoming serious and dutiful. He approached me with his hand extended formally. "Mrs. Vance," he repeated, his grip surprisingly firm. "I'm Samuel. I help with the horses and in the garden. Mr. Arthur was my best friend." I took his hand on instinct, my mind a chaotic storm of confusion and grief. "It's nice to meet you, Samuel." His innocent, bright eyes searched my face. "Would you like to see Leo's special place?" he asked, his voice filled with earnest sincerity. "I put fresh wildflowers there every Thursday. Mr. Arthur said flowers make Leo happy in heaven." I felt the air rush from my lungs, a suffocating weight pressing down on my chest. Leo's special place. Wildflowers. I looked at Sarah, my eyes silently pleading for an explanation, for an escape from this waking nightmare. "Arthur built a memorial," she said softly, her voice a distant anchor in my swirling consciousness. "Up on the overlook." The overlook. The treacherous granite outcropping where my 10-year-old son had been climbing, the place where he had slipped while I was inside frosting his birthday cake, blissfully unaware, until the silence stretched for too long, until it was horribly, irreversibly too late. The place that had not just broken my heart, but incinerated my soul. "I can't," I gasped, stumbling backward, my body desperate to flee. "I have to go. I need to leave." But Samuel, sensing my distress, took my hand in both of his warm ones. "Don't be scared, Mrs. Vance," he said, his simplicity cutting through my panic. "The overlook is safe now, Mr. Arthur built a beautiful trail with railings, so other kids don't go to heaven too early like Leo did." Before I could even begin to process the meaning of his words, the roar of an engine shattered the fragile quiet. A sleek black SUV came speeding up the gravel road, kicking up a cloud of dust. Mark? He had followed me after all. "Mom!" he yelled, jumping out of the car before it had even come to a complete stop. He ran to my side, his gaze sweeping over the impossible scene of cabins and people, his face a mask of confusion and anger. "What the hell is going on here? Who are these people?" As Sarah turned to face my eldest son, her expression shifted, her gentle demeanor solidifying into something more resolute. "This is your father's legacy," she said simply. "And you must be Mark. He spoke of you often." My son's face darkened with suspicion and rage. "This property was supposed to be abandoned," he snarled, stepping between me and Sarah, a protective barrier against the madness he had just discovered. "Who gave you permission to be here?" Samuel, startled by Mark's aggressive tone, took a step back, positioning himself slightly behind me, as if for protection. "Your father did," Sarah replied, her voice remaining firm and unwavering. "For the last 30 years. That's impossible," Mark snapped, his voice echoing in the wide-open space. "My father never mentioned a word about any of this. He never came back here. It was a statement of fact, a truth we had all lived by for 3 decades, a truth that was now crumbling to dust around me. Because he promised your mother he wouldn't," Sarah said, and the calmness of her delivery somehow made the words more shattering. "He spent his life keeping 2 promises, to never turn his back on those in need, and to never hurt Eleanor with the memory of this place." I finally found my voice, though it sounded like it belonged to a stranger, distant and reedy. "You said you've been waiting for me," I directed at Sarah, pushing past Mark's protective stance. "How did you know I would come?" Her eyes softened with a familiar sorrow. "Arthur knew. He knew that eventually, after he was gone, you would have to. He left instructions." She reached into the pocket of her work pants and pulled out a single ornate brass key. There are things he wanted you to see. When you were ready. Mark stepped forward again, his jaw set. We're not here for some cryptic scavenger hunt. This property is being sold. These people, he gestured dismissively at the residents who had begun to watch us from a distance, need to be removed. Immediately, I saw a woman clutch her small child's hand a little tighter. The anxiety was a palpable thing, a wave rolling through the small community. Mark, please, I said, a surprising strength flowing into me. Let's just try to understand what is happening here. What's happening is trespassing, Mom. We need to call the sheriff. From behind me, Samuel spoke up, his voice small but clear. Mr. Arthur said we could stay forever. He promised. Mark's face flushed a deep, angry red. My father has been dead for 6 months, he said, his voice dangerously low, and he didn't own this place alone. My mother is the joint owner, which makes us the ones in charge now. Yes, Sarah interrupted, her tone shifting from compassionate to purely businesslike. We are fully aware of the legal ownership. That is precisely why we have been waiting. Arthur was meticulous in his planning. He knew this day would come. Just then, a young woman with a toddler balanced expertly on her hip approached us from one of the cabins. She had the posture of someone in the military and eyes that looked far older than her years. Everything okay, Sarah? She asked, her gaze flicking cautiously from Mark's angry face to my tear-streaked one. Everything is fine, Clara, Sarah assured her with a calm smile. This is Mrs. Vance and her son. They're just visiting. The young woman, Clara, relaxed her shoulders slightly, but her eyes remained watchful. Should I let the others know? She asked quietly. Not yet, Sarah replied. Let's give Mrs. Vance some time first. I studied the young woman, who couldn't have been more than 23 or 24. The child on her hip had the same wary, intelligent eyes. You live here? I asked her directly, my voice still shaky. She nodded. For 2 years now. Since my husband. Since Afghanistan. Her voice trailed off, but the chasm of loss in her words was profoundly clear. I saw Mark's jaw clench. Even in his fury, he seemed to recognize the poor optics of ordering a military widow and her child off a property he intended to sell. He was a businessman after all, and he knew a public relations disaster when he saw one. Mom, we need to discuss this privately, he said. His voice clipped and tense. Yes, Sarah agreed smoothly. Mrs. Vance, perhaps you'd like to see the house. Your house? My house? The words echoed in the chambers of my heart. The house where I'd brought all my babies home from the hospital, where I'd taught Leo to read by the stone fireplace, where I'd watched him take his first steps on the wide wraparound porch. I'm coming with you, Mark insisted, his hand protectively on my elbow. Actually, I said, the words surprising me as much as they did him, I would like a few minutes alone with Sarah. His eyebrows shot up in disbelief. Mom, we have no idea who these people are. This could be some elaborate scam. I believe, I replied, a strange and unfamiliar calm settling over me like a weighted blanket, that they are people Arthur knew. For now, that is enough for me to go on. I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes, the quick assessment of whether to argue with me. 38 years of being my son had taught him how to recognize the rare moments when my quiet nature hardened into unshakable resolve. Fine, he finally conceded, his frustration palpable. 30 minutes. Then I am calling our lawyer. An hour, I countered. The act of negotiation feeling foreign and strangely empowering. As Mark retreated reluctantly to the shade of his SUV, I followed Sarah toward the farmhouse, with Samuel trailing happily behind us. Once again, Arthur's fishing hat askew on his head. Each step on the familiar stone walkway was a step back in time. Rocking my babies on the porch swing during summer thunderstorms. Arthur, his brow furrowed in concentration, replacing a warped floorboard. Leo's height, marked in pencil on the white doorframe, a ladder of meticulously recorded growth, ending abruptly at age 10. Arthur kept the exterior as close to the original as he could, Sarah said, as she opened the front door. He said the bones of the house had to remain the same. Structurally, it was my home. The wide entryway, the living room to the right, the large kitchen straight ahead, the familiar staircase to the left. But the soul of the house was entirely different. The living room, where Leo had built elaborate forts out of couch cushions, now held 3 large desks with computers, and filing cabinets lined the walls. A massive whiteboard was covered in a complex grid, displaying a duty roster, a meal schedule, and a list of medical appointments. "This functions as our main office now," Sarah explained, noticing my bewildered expression. As the community grew, we had to repurpose some of the original spaces. How many people live here now?" I managed to ask, the scale of it all beginning to dawn on me. "Currently, 47, she said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. 18 veterans, 8 women who have left domestic situations with their 11 children, Samuel and his mother, Grace, and a family of 6 refugees from Afghanistan." 47? I repeated, the number feeling impossible. "And Arthur? He knew them all?" "He knew every single person who ever stayed here," she confirmed. "He said he couldn't offer a home to a stranger." She led me toward the back of the house, into the kitchen. It was no longer a family kitchen, but an industrial one, with 2 huge stainless steel stoves, an enormous refrigerator that hummed loudly, and long metal prep tables. "We serve 3 meals a day here, plus snacks for the children." "How?" I asked, the one-word question containing a universe of disbelief. How was any of this possible? Arthur was an architect. We weren't wealthy. We lived a comfortable life, but we were not millionaires. Sarah's kind eyes met mine. "The land," she said simply. Arthur leveraged the land. On one of the prep tables, amidst mixing bowls and a basket of fresh vegetables, was a stack of children's drawings. One, in particular, caught my eye. It depicted a group of stick figures standing on a high cliff, looking out over the valley. Above it, in a child's careful scrawl, were the words, "Leo's View." My throat tightened. "What is Leo's View?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah exchanged a brief, meaningful look with Samuel, who had been quietly observing everything. "It's the special place," Samuel piped up, his face brightening. "The overlook, where kids learn about being safe, so they don't fall. I put flowers there every Thursday, because that's the day Leo went to heaven." The room tilted violently, and Sarah quickly pulled out a sturdy kitchen chair for me just before my knees gave out. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Vance," she said quickly. "That was too much, too soon. We should have waited." "Show me," I interrupted, gripping the edge of the table. "I need you to show me everything." Sarah nodded slowly, her expression full of understanding. "First," she said, "there is something else. Something upstairs you must see before anything else." She led me up the familiar, creaking staircase, my hand trailing on the smooth oak banister Arthur had sanded and finished himself. We passed the doors to my children's old rooms and stopped at the master bedroom at the end of the hall. It was now clearly Sarah's living quarters, sparse, clean, and practical. She walked over to a simple bookshelf and took down a polished wooden box. "Arthur left this for you," she said, her voice soft. "He made me promise I would give it to you personally before you saw anything else." The box was beautifully hand-carved, with my initial N inlaid in shimmering mother-of-pearl. It was his handiwork. I recognized the style. I had never seen it before. My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark velvet, was a thick envelope with my name, Eleanor, written in Arthur's distinctive, elegant script. And beneath it, tied in neat bundles with twine, were dozens, no, hundreds of sealed letters, each one meticulously dated. A lifetime of correspondence that had never been sent. I picked up the single envelope on top and slid my finger under the seal. The letter inside was a single page. "My dearest Nora," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I have left this world, and you have, against all odds, found your way back to the ranch. I have rehearsed this moment in my mind 1,000 times, always wondering if my courage to tell you the truth would arrive before my death. It seems death won the race. I have kept a secret from you, my love. Not a sordid affair or a hidden vice, but a hidden life, one I built in the shadow of the one we shared in Salt Lake City. A life where Leo's memory is a foundation, not a wound. After we lost him, I couldn't sell this land. I couldn't bear the thought of strangers living in a place where our son's laughter once filled every corner. But I couldn't let it decay either. So I came back first to grieve, then to rebuild, and finally to repurpose. What began with a single homeless veteran I found seeking shelter in our old barn has become this, a sanctuary. I have written to you every single month for 30 years, explaining everything. I never sent them because I was a coward. I feared that reopening your wound would destroy the fragile peace you had found. Forgive me, Nora girl. Forgive me for the secrets, for the silence, and for leaving you to face this burden alone. But please, before you decide the fate of this place, I beg you to see what it has become. I have loved you completely, even in my deception. Always, Arthur. Tears streamed unchecked down my face, blurring Arthur's familiar handwriting into an indecipherable mess. I looked up at Sarah, the unsent letters feeling impossibly heavy in my lap. "You knew," I whispered, the words thick with 30 years of oblivious sorrow. "You knew all of this, all this time." "For 15 years, she confirmed, her voice gentle. "Arthur found me at a community shelter in Cheyenne. I was a social worker, completely burned out by a system that felt broken beyond repair. He brought me here, showed me the small community he had started, and offered me a new purpose. He asked me to help him run it, to build it into what it is today. While I was in Salt Lake City, knowing nothing, I said, the thought a fresh wave of pain, because he loved you more than anything," she replied, with a certainty that left no room for doubt. "He believed that protecting your peace was the most important thing he could do. The question now, Mrs. Vance, is whether you are ready to see what your son's death and your husband's love helped to create." Through the curtain of my tears, I gave a single, resolute nod. It was time. It was long past time to face the overlook. The path that led up the rocky slope was not the treacherous, informal trail I remembered from my nightmares. Arthur, the architect, had carved a new way. It was a gentle, winding path of switchbacks, laid with crushed granite that was firm underfoot. Sturdy wooden railings flanked the entire route, and benches were placed at scenic intervals, inviting rest and reflection. Along the way, small, professionally made signs warned of loose rocks and reminded hikers to stay on the trail. Safety, order, prevention, everything that had been absent on that terrible day. I stopped, pressing my hand against the cool, rough bark of a towering pine tree, my breath catching in my chest. "You say his name so easily," I said to Sarah, who had paused beside me. "Leo. Arthur spoke of him every day," she replied softly. "Every person who lives here knows Leo's story. He is the reason this place exists." "I haven't said his name out loud in almost 30 years, I confessed, the admission tearing its way out of a deeply buried part of me. It always hurt too much. "I can only imagine," she said, her understanding simple and profound. But she couldn't. No one could possibly comprehend the unique, searing agony of that day. The memory, which I had suppressed with brutal efficiency for decades, now returned with horrifying clarity. I was in the kitchen, the scent of vanilla and sugar thick in the air, as I put the finishing touches on Leo's 11th birthday cake. I glanced out the window, expecting to see him practicing with his new bow and arrow in the meadow, but the field was empty. A small, cold knot of unease began to form in my stomach. I called his name, first from the back porch, then louder, walking out into the yard. The silence that answered was unnatural. A heavy, dead air stillness where a boy's boisterous energy should have been. Panic, cold, and sharp, seized me. I ran, frantically, toward the one place I had forbidden him from going alone. The overlook. Screaming his name, my voice raw with terror, I scrambled up the dangerous rocky path. And then I saw it. A small, bright blue t-shirt, snagged on a thorny bush near the cliff's edge. Below, at the bottom of the ravine, a crumpled shape. So small, so terribly, terribly still. Mrs. Vance? Sarah's voice pulled me from the abyss of my memory. Nora, we can turn back. We can do this another day. No, I said, my voice firm, shaking myself free from the ghosts of the past. Now. We continued the rest of the way in silence. As we neared the top, I saw that Samuel had run ahead of us. He was waiting for us at the summit. The trees thinned, and the overlook spread out before me. But it was not the menacing, wild place of my memory. Arthur had transformed it. The summit was a beautiful, landscaped plateau, enclosed by a high, strong safety fence. In the center, where the ground was highest, stood a simple, elegant memorial carved from a single slab of local granite. Samuel was there, carefully placing his wildflowers into a small, built-in stone vase at its base. My legs felt like lead as I slowly approached, my heart hammering against my ribs. The memorial stone was smooth and cool to the touch, and a bronze plaque was embedded in its face. Gleaming in the sunday, it read, Leo Vance, 1975 to 1985. For every life guided to safety from this place, his spirit climbs higher. Below that, a second, smaller plaque had been affixed to the stone. 112 at-risk youths have learned wilderness safety and climbing skills here. Not one has been lost. My knees buckled. I sank onto a heavy wooden bench that faced the memorial, the world dissolving into a blur of tears. 112. The number was a physical blow, a testament to a mission I never knew existed. Sarah sat beside me, waiting patiently for the first wave of shock and grief to pass. Arthur started the youth program about 20 years ago, she said quietly, her voice a steady presence in my storm. He partnered with youth centers and social services in Cheyenne and Billings. Every child who comes to the ranch for any reason has to complete the safety course. She hesitated for a moment, then continued. Your own grandson was one of them. My head snapped up, my tear-filled eyes locking with hers. What are you talking about? Julia's boy, Ethan. When he was 16, he started getting into trouble, hanging out with a rough crowd, skipping school. Do you remember? I did. Julia had been beside herself with worry. Arthur had listened quietly during one of our Sunday phone calls, offering vague words of support, then changed the subject. Classic Arthur, always avoiding emotional family drama. Arthur secretly paid for Ethan to attend a 2-week intensive wilderness survival program in Colorado, Sarah explained. He told Julia it was an anonymous scholarship he'd heard about through a colleague. He drove the 4 hours to the camp's location every single day, just to watch from his car, hidden among the trees, to make sure Ethan was okay. To see him learning the skills he wished he'd taught Leo, disbelief warred with a new, dawning understanding. Julia never knew. We never knew. No one knew except me. Sarah said. I had to reschedule a grant application meeting he was supposed to lead. That was Arthur, solving problems from the shadows, absorbing the cost, both financial and emotional, himself. I stared at the memorial, at the impossible number etched into the plaque, and finally asked the question that had been haunting me since I arrived. Why? Why didn't he ever tell me any of this? Sarah took a deep breath. He tried. About 5 years after the accident, this place was already providing shelter for a dozen veterans. Arthur wanted to tell you. He drove all the way to Salt Lake City. He had photos, architectural plans for the first cabins, a whole speech prepared to show you how he was finding a way to heal by helping others. What happened? I whispered. He got to your neighborhood and saw you outside a bookstore, laughing with a group of friends from your book club, she said softly. He told me it was the first time he had seen you truly, genuinely laugh since Leo died. He said your joy looked so fragile. He couldn't bear to risk breaking it by dragging you back into the pain of this place. He turned the car around, drove back here, and started building the first real cabin the next day. The memory surfaced, hazy but there. A sunny afternoon, the feeling of a small, momentary reprieve from the constant, crushing weight of grief. I had felt so guilty for that laughter later that night. I never knew my husband had been its silent witness. He decided then, Sarah continued, that as long as you were healing, he would carry this burden for both of you. And every time he thought you might be ready, something would happen. A panic attack you had at a dinner party when someone mentioned Wyoming. The way you refused to have any of Leo's photographs displayed in the house. The nightmares that still came every year on his birthday. I had thought I'd hidden my brokenness so well, but he had seen every crack. He had seen it all and chosen to build his own world here. A world where our son's memory could be a source of strength. Leaving me to my world of quiet, locked-away grief. As if summoned by our conversation, a group of about a dozen people appeared on the path below, a mix of adults and children making their way up toward the overlook. They carried sketch pads and binoculars. Their chatter and laughter, a strange but not unwelcome sound in a place I had only ever associated with silence and sorrow. It's the Thursday afternoon nature class, Sarah explained, standing up. We teach the children and any adults who are interested about the local ecosystem. Arthur thought it was important for them to understand and respect the land. A little girl, with fiery red hair that caught the afternoon sun, the exact shade of copper as Leo's had been, broke away from the group and ran ahead. Miss Sarah, are we going to look for the golden eagle nest today? She asked breathlessly. We certainly are, Annie, Sarah replied. But first, say hello to our visitor. The little girl Annie turned her bright, curious eyes to me. Are you a new grandma here? She asked. Her innocence, a sharp, painful pang in my heart. My grandma lives in heaven with my daddy. Before I could find the words to respond, a young woman, presumably her mother, hurried over. Annie, don't bother our guest, she said, before turning to me with an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry. I'm Andrea. It's perfectly all right, I assured her, my voice thick. And yes, Annie, I added, looking at the sweet, freckled face that was a ghostly echo of my son's. I suppose I am new here. The child beamed. Will you come look for the eagle's nest with us? It's a secret, but I can show you. Something twisted inside me, a complex knot of pain and a strange, unfamiliar warmth. I would like that very much, I heard myself say. As Andrea led her daughter away to join the group, Sarah touched my arm gently. Let me show you the rest of the ranch, she said. There is much more to understand. We walked back down the winding path, taking a different route that led past the neat row of cabins I had seen from the hill. Each one was a small but complete home, with a little porch and a garden plot out front. Arthur designed them himself, Sarah explained. He used reclaimed timber from the property. They were built by a veteran architect who found his purpose again here after losing his own family. Beyond the cabins, the massive greenhouse hummed with an internal climate control system. Inside, rows upon rows of vegetables grew under hydroponic lights, providing fresh produce for the community year-round. It was an impressive, state-of-the-art operation. The north parcel of the ranch, the part with the mineral rights, Arthur sold it last year, Sarah said casually as we walked. He used the money from that sale to fund our sustainability projects, like this greenhouse and the solar array. I stopped dead in my tracks, her words snagging in my mind. He sold part of the ranch? For how much? Sarah hesitated, clearly knowing the significance of her answer. $3 million, she said quietly. The number was so large, so incomprehensible, that it didn't feel real. $3 million, a secret fortune. My initial shock quickly curdled into a hot, bitter anger. I thought of Mark, who had struggled to get a loan to expand his business just last year. I thought of Julia, whose husband had been laid off, and the mountain of medical bills they were facing after their youngest daughter's surgery. I thought of Daniel and the astronomical costs of the rehabilitation centers he'd been in and out of for years. Arthur had known all of it, and he had told them all that money was tight, that his retirement fund was modest. "Show me the paperwork," I said, my voice suddenly hard, stripped of all its earlier grief. "Show me everything. The trust documents, the financial records, all of it." Sarah simply nodded, her expression revealing no surprise at my reaction. "Of course," she said. "It's all in Arthur's office." We returned to the main house, and she led me to a small room off the main hallway that I had completely forgotten existed. We had used it to store old furniture and boxes. Now, it was undeniably Arthur's space. His architectural reference books filled the shelves alongside his collection of worn-out history novels. The desk was a beautiful antique roll top that had once been in the basement of our Salt Lake City home. And on the wall, directly above the desk, was a framed photograph of Leo from his first day of school, his gap-toothed smile beaming with pride. I reached out and gently touched the glass. "He kept this here," I whispered. "He kept all the family photos here," Sarah said. "Our family." He called this his heart room. She walked to the desk and used the brass key she'd shown me earlier to unlock the deep bottom drawer. "These are the trust documents, the property records, and all the financial statements related to the land sale," she said, placing a thick stack of binders on the desk. "And these," she added, setting several leather-bound journals beside them, "are his personal diaries. 30 years' worth." I sank into Arthur's worn leather chair, the scent of him old books and sawdust still clinging to it. I ran my fingers over the cover of the topmost journal. The earliest one, dated the year after we lost Leo. "I will give you some privacy," Sarah said, quietly moving toward the door. "But Mark will likely be back soon, and he'll be demanding answers." "Let him wait," I replied, my voice distant as I opened the first journal. The entry was dated exactly 1 month after we had moved. "Came back to the ranch today. I couldn't go through with the sale. Couldn't bear the thought of another family living where Leo's laughter still echoes in my ears. I found the realtor's sign hammered into the gatepost and tore it out of the ground. Called him and told him we'd had a change of heart. Nora doesn't know. The first real secret I have ever kept from her in 15 years of marriage. But how can I tell her that I need this place, that she cannot bear to even think about? I slept in Leo's room tonight. I found one of his toy soldiers under the bed. I cried until the sun came up. With trembling hands, I flipped forward several pages, then to another journal. A year after Leo's death. Found a man sleeping in the barn today. Richard Peterson. A Vietnam vet, he said. No home, no family. He had the same haunted look in his eyes that I see in the mirror every morning. I offered him dinner. He asked if he could stay, help with repairs in exchange for a roof over his head. I said yes, without even thinking. It feels right, having another soul on this land. The ranch was never meant to be empty. 5 years later, there are 12 of them living here now. Richard brought others. All vets. All lost, in one way or another. We're fixing up the old bunkhouse. They are healing this ranch, and I think, in a way, it's healing them. I should tell Nora. I drove to Salt Lake City today, determined to do it. I had photos in my pocket, but then I saw her. She was coming out of that little Italian restaurant she loves, laughing with her friends. It was the first time I'd seen her truly laugh since we lost our boy. I couldn't do it. I couldn't risk taking that away from her. I came back here and started drawing up plans for a proper cabin instead. And then, 15 years ago, met a woman named Sarah Clark today, a social worker, burned out and broken by the system. I found her volunteering at a shelter in Cheyenne. She has Nora's quiet strength. I've offered her the job of director to help me organize this place. We have 5 children living here now. They need a proper advocate. When she saw what we've built, she cried. She said she felt like she'd finally found her true calling. I think I have too. My hands shaking, I reached for the final journal. The entries were from the last year. The doctor says my heart is giving out. 6 months, maybe less. I haven't told Nora. I can't bear to see that fear in her eyes again. I have to use this time to secure the ranch's future. The trust is almost finalized. Sarah will be able to run things without me. I sold the north parcel to the energy company. $3 million. I told Nora I was at an urban planning conference in Dallas. More lies to protect her. The money will ensure this place is self-sustaining for decades to come. My legacy for Leo, transforming the place of his death into a sanctuary for life. And then, the very last entry, dated just 2 weeks before he died. I made a video for Nora today, out by Leo's memorial. I tried to explain everything. 112 kids have gone through the safety program now. 112 lives potentially saved. I hope someday she will understand that I built this secret life not from a lack of love for her, but from an abundance of it. The ranch is ready. I am ready. But I'm afraid I am leaving her with the most impossible burden of all: the truth. I closed the journal just as the sound of car doors slamming outside broke the profound silence. Mark had returned, and he had brought Julia and Daniel with him. All 3 of my surviving children were marching toward the house, their faces set and determined, ready to sell their brother's true legacy without ever knowing it existed. This is completely absurd, Mark's voice, sharp and furious, carried through the open window of the study. Squatters' rights haven't been a valid defense in decades, especially when the legal owners are standing right here. I quickly wiped the tears from my eyes, tucking Arthur's final journal back into the desk drawer just as I heard my children's footsteps on the porch. When I stepped outside, my 3 children were standing in the front yard, in a tense standoff with Sarah, who maintained her unshakable calm. As I have already explained, Mr. Vance, she was saying, this entire property is held in a legally binding trust. I am simply the administrator. Your mother is the person you should be speaking with. 3 heads swiveled in my direction. Julia, my daughter, rushed to my side, her lawyer's mind immediately assessing my red-rimmed eyes and emotional state. Mom, what have these people been telling you? Are you all right? She asked, her tone a mixture of genuine concern and professional assessment. I'm fine, Julia, I said, surprised by the newfound steadiness in my own voice. And they are not these people. They are the residents of the Vance Wilderness Project. The what? Mark retorted with a contemptuous laugh. Mom, this ranch hasn't existed for 30 years. This is just a piece of land that we own, which has apparently been colonized by a group of strangers. Arthur's diaries say otherwise, I replied, my gaze unwavering. He has been coming here every single month, since the year we left. He's been building something here. Dad? Daniel, my youngest, spoke for the first time, his face a canvas of pure confusion. He had always been the sensitive one, the one most like Arthur in temperament. Dad was running this place? Not running it, Sarah interjected quietly. He was creating it, funding it, loving it, and lying about it. Mark snapped, his anger redirected at me now. If what you're saying is true, Mom, it means he lied to all of us. For 30 years. The accusation stung, a painful truth that even Arthur's diaries couldn't erase. He did, I acknowledged, my voice soft but firm. He did it to protect me and to honor Leo. Leo has been gone for 30 years, Julia said, her voice softening slightly at my obvious pain, but her logic remained sharp. We all loved him, Mom. But this, she gestured around at the bustling community behind us. This is something else. This is Dad hiding millions of dollars in family assets to fund a secret charity project. 3 million to be exact, I said, the words falling like stones into the tense silence from the sale of the North Parcel last year. Mark's face went from red to a pale, shocked white. 3 million? He stammered. Are you kidding me? I asked Dad for a bridge loan for my company last spring. He said his funds were tied up in low-yield investments, and he told me to look into payment plans for Lizzie's braces, Julia added, her voice laced with a fresh layer of hurt and betrayal. He said retirement had made them more budget-conscious. I hadn't known these specific details, these small, painful rejections that now seemed like cruel deceptions. In our marriage, Arthur had always handled the finances, a task I had gladly relinquished. Now, I felt like a fool, complicit in a lie I never knew was being told. Daniel, still silent, was watching the activity of the ranch. A group of veterans was returning from a work project, their shoulders slumped with fatigue but their faces content. Women were gathering their children from the playground. Samuel, seeing us all gathered, waved excitedly from the porch of the main house. I want to see it all, I declared, my decision solidifying in that instant. Before we discuss selling anything, I need to understand what your father built. Mom, the representative from the energy company is meeting us here tomorrow morning, Mark protested, his business instincts kicking back in. Their offer is $25 million. That's life-changing money for all of us. For your grandchildren. One day, Mark, I said, looking him directly in the eye, I am asking for one day to learn the truth about the last 30 years of your father's life. Something in my tone, a steel that had been forged in the last few hours of revelation, must have stopped him. He sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. Fine, one day. Then we call the lawyers and we clear this place out. I'm calling my husband now, Julia announced, already pulling out her phone. Greg needs to see these supposed trust documents. That is your right, I agreed. Then I turned to my youngest. Daniel, will you stay? My son nodded, his gaze fixed on Samuel, who was now hurrying toward us, waving something in his hand. Mrs. Vance! I found it, he called out. I found Leo's picture. He thrust a small, framed photograph into my hands. It was Leo on his 8th birthday, his smile wide and impossibly bright, proudly holding up the new compass his father had given him. Arthur had taken that picture right here, on this very porch. Where did you find this, Samuel? I whispered, my thumb stroking the image of my lost son. In Mr. Arthur's special room, he said proudly. He showed me all the pictures. He said I needed to know who Leo was because we would have been good friends. Samuel's innocent expression suddenly clouded with worry as he looked at Mark and Julia. Are they going to make you leave us? I felt my children stiffen beside me, recognizing the potent emotional power of this simple, heartfelt question. "No one is leaving just yet, Samuel," I assured him, clutching the photograph to my chest. "We're just talking." "Good," he beamed. "Because you have to see the horses, and the schoolhouse, and Richard's woodshop, and Grace makes the best cherry pie on Thursdays." His excitement was a pure, cleansing force. Daniel stepped forward, extending a hand to Samuel. "I'd like to see the horses," he said. "I'm Daniel, Mrs. Vance's son." Samuel's face lit up. "Leo's brother!" he exclaimed. "Mr. Arthur told me you were good with animals when you were a boy. He said you could calm the scared ones just by talking to them." A shadow, a flicker of an old pain, crossed Daniel's face before he masked it. "He said that?" he asked softly. "He said you could whisper to them," Samuel insisted, taking Daniel's hand and pulling him toward the stables. "We have a new mare. She's afraid of everything. Maybe you can help her." Daniel glanced back at me, a silent, vulnerable question in his eyes. "Go," I encouraged him, my heart aching with a love so fierce it almost hurt. "I'd like to hear what else your father had to say about you." As they walked away, Mark shook his head in disgust. "Unbelievable. They're manipulating you, Mom. Can't you see it?" "Or perhaps," I replied, the thought surprising me with its clarity, "your father left more of his true self here than he ever did in Salt Lake City. I am staying for dinner. You can leave or you can stay. But I am not signing a single document tomorrow until I know exactly what it is I would be destroying." Jennifer rejoined us, her phone call with her husband complete. "Greg says these trust documents might not even be legal. Dad wasn't a lawyer." "No," a new voice said from behind us. "But I am, and I can assure you they are ironclad." We all turned to see an elderly man in a wheelchair being pushed by a middle-aged woman. He rolled to a stop before us. "Richard Peterson," he introduced himself, his eyes sharp and intelligent despite his age, "original resident, and legal counsel for the Vance Wilderness Project Trust since its inception." Michael stared at him, dumbfounded. "You're a lawyer?" The old man's eyes twinkled. "Harvard Law, class of '72. Before that, Vietnam. After that, a whole lot of nothing. Your father found me sleeping in his barn and gave me back my purpose. Would you like to review the documents, young man? I'd be happy to walk you through every clause." Michael's bravado visibly crumbled. The woman pushing the wheelchair smiled warmly. "Dinner is in 30 minutes, she announced. "We would be honored if the Vance family would join us." "Grace makes the meal assignments," Sarah added. "She used to be the head chef at the Little America Hotel in Cheyenne." "Samuel's mother?" I guessed. Sarah nodded. "Arthur found them living in their car. Samuel was having seizures, and they couldn't afford his medication. I thought of Samuel's sunny, open heart. We will stay for dinner," I decided, looking pointedly at Mark and Julia. "All of us." For 30 years, I believed that the only way to survive grief was to build a wall around it, to lock the door and throw away the key. I ran from the memory of my son, and in doing so, I ran from a part of myself and a part of my husband I never knew. Standing at that gate, I thought I was returning to an ending, to the final, painful act of selling a haunted piece of land. I was wrong. I was returning to a beginning. My husband, Arthur, kept a secret that spanned decades. It was a secret born from his own guilt and a desperate, profound love. He made a choice I may never have been brave enough to make. He ran toward the pain. He built a sanctuary on the very grounds of our sorrow, transforming the site of our greatest loss into a place of impossible hope. He taught me, even after he was gone, that a memory doesn't have to be a ghost. It can be a foundation. So many of us carry our own private sorrows, our own abandoned ranches of the heart. We have places within us that we refuse to visit, names we dare not speak aloud. We believe that healing means forgetting, that strength means silence, But what if the only way out is through? What if the legacy of our deepest pain is not meant to be an emptiness we carry, but a space we can choose to fill with new purpose, new life, new love? It is never too late to turn the key. It is never too late to push open the gate. You may not find a community of 47 people waiting for you, but you might just find a part of yourself you thought was lost forever. You might find that your heart, no matter how broken, still knows how to build. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing and supporting our channel for more stories about the incredible resilience of the human spirit.